Sugar. Highly addictive, horribly debilitating, unfortunately persuasive, and very, very, very delicious. If I had one culprit to point to our country's expanding waistlines and rapidly deteriorating health, it would be sugar. The amount of sugar, the amount of havoc and sugar that sugar and sugar substitutes have wreaked on our nation is really, really depressing. But fear not, for I've come up with the perfect solution. Eat less sugar if you want to live longer. But before we dig in deep, I want to let you know that if you feel addicted to sugar, you're not alone. Millions of other people find themselves in the exact same spot as you. Nutrition and cutting back on sugar is the biggest change that needs to happen if you're trying to lose weight and become healthy. The problem isn't just knowing we need to eat less sugar either. It's that we need to build systems to help retrain ourselves to not being hooked on it. I want to talk about just how big of a factor sugar plays in our lives. This might be the most telling statistic relating to sugar, especially when it comes close to 70% of America is overweight, with a third of the nation obese. In 1822, Americans consumed about 45 grams of sugar every 5 days, or the amount of sugar in a can of Coke. In 2012, Americans consumed 756 grams of sugar every 5 days, or 130 pounds of sugar every year. According to the American Heart Association, men should eat a maximum of 9 teaspoons of sugar per day, or 37 grams. And women should consume only 36 teaspoons a day, or 25 grams. The World Health Association has much stricter guidelines, however, though, and they recommend no more than 10 grams, or a little over 2 teaspoons, for both men and women. To put that into perspective, one regular 12-ounce can of Coke contains about 10 teaspoons of sugar. That is over the recommendation in just that one small of soda. As we as a country have grown in more ways than one, sugar has continued to play an increasingly more prominent role in our food. It's not just sugary foods like candy and cookies either, but sugar has made its way into practically everything that we eat. Now we know that correlation does not prove causation, so let's dig into the science behind that sugar is ruining our bodies. So sugar is a carbohydrate. If it ends in ose, O-S-E, it's going to be a sugar. There are different kinds of sugars, however, starting with simple sugars called monosaccharides, like glucose, fructose, and galactose. Then there are also more complex forms called disaccharides, like sucrose, maltose, and lactose. So we have a few key types of sugar, but where does sugar actually come from? This is usually created as a result of the processing of one of the types of plants, sugar beets or sugar cane. These plants are harvested, processed, and refined to eventually resemble the white, sugary stuff they've come to know and love, or loathe. This sugar has absolutely no nutritional value. It's just pure, refined sugar. Hopefully, you don't need me to tell you that sugar can cause tooth decay and rot your teeth. Sugar is a lifeline to cavity creeps. Beyond that, your body processes sugar in very specific ways. When you consume sugar, your body has 2 options on how to deal with it. 1, burn it for energy, which is great, or 2, convert it to fat and store it in your fat cells, which is not so great. Depending on your genetic disposition, your body might either be better equipped to process sugar as energy or might be more likely to store it as fat. Think of it like you think of 2 people with faster metabolisms versus people with slower metabolisms. Problem is, there's a lot more room for fat storage and a lot less room for fat burning, for you to be able to burn that sugar as energy. So we have the sugar in our bodies and in the bloodstream, so what happens next? When your pancreas detects a rush of sugar, it releases a hormone called insulin to deal with all that of excess sugar. Insulin helps you to regulate the level of sugar in your blood. The more sugar in your bloodstream, the more insulin is released. Insulin helps store all this glucose in the liver and muscles as glycogen and in our fat cells. Now, oftentimes our body struggles to get that balance right with us putting way too much sugar in our system very quickly. Too much insulin is released, which ultimately results in our blood sugar dropping below normal levels. This is called hypoglycemia, essentially a sugar crash. Our bodies respond by telling us we want more sugar, so we cram sugar down our throats and the process starts all over again. Unfortunately, the more often this takes place, or the more sugar you consume, the more severe blood sugar spikes and the more insulin is required. This means it's easier and easier to skip using sugar as energy and go straight into extra insulin and fat storage. Also, I would like to talk about how sugar plays an effect on your brain. So sugar affects the same part of your brain that things like cocaine and sex do. It affects the pleasure center of your brain. And so when you get sugar, it releases dopamine, and you feel happy, and you're like, oh, I like this. And then you want more and more and more. But it's also turning off another hormone in your brain that tells you, okay, no, this is enough. This is too much to handle, because it gives you that happy feeling, and that overrides how much the stopping feeling. So then ultimately you become addicted. So this is a picture of how of a CAT scan of your brain addicted to sugar and addicted to cocaine. It's affecting the same exact area, and it's not very good for you. So along with making you fat and making you addicted, sugar consumption has been implicated in a little litany of crimes, including contributing to an increased chance of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, muscular degeneration, retinal failure, kidney, chronic disease, and high blood pressure, among many others. Now you might be thinking, I'll just eat less sugar and we won't have this issue, right? Well, that's a good start, but it's only half the battle. You see, our bodies actually process certain types of carbohydrates in a very similar way to processing pure sugar. Believe it or not, there is an entire area of scientific research on how our body processes certain foods. Generally, the more refined or processed the food is, the more likely it'll be converted quickly to sugar in our body for processing. So, we're learning that sugar is bad for us. That's nothing new. And it's not a shock that companies that manufacture food for that reason, and it's not a shock to companies that manufacture that food, for that reason, companies have started to disguise the sugar in their foods, and it's not as apparent that you're actually consuming sugar. For example, names like high fructose corn syrup and dextrose are just names for sugar. So, like I said, understand that you are in control. If you're going to eat chocolate or something sweet, it's up to you, because you made the conscious decision to do it occasionally, not because you have to. Understand that it will be challenging. Understand that there will be cravings that get the better of you from time to time, but most importantly, understand that what you really want, a happier, healthier life. You can't make it if you keep settling for what you want right now, which is sugar. I challenge you that you can change. I challenge you to read your food labels and eat less processed food. Be conscious of the things that you're putting into your well-oiled machine in order to make it run better. I also challenge you to reduce your sugar intake. Start eating more real foods and less processed ones. And I challenge you that everything is in moderation. It's okay to have a little bit of sugar, a little bit of chocolate every now and then, but do so in moderation. I challenge you to take control of your life and your health, and don't let your addiction stop you from living the life you deserve. Thank you.